the very beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, which was perhaps Jesus' most famous body of teaching. And he began that sermon by calling out these 8 groups of people and offering blessings to them. And this week we are on the second to last one of these groups. And this beatitude goes, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God," or the children of God. And this is an important concept for us to think about. What does it mean to be a peacemaker? What does it really mean to seek peace in our lives? And what does it have to do with us being children of God? And what does it mean for us to be called children of God? And so, to begin this morning, I want to turn to the Word and share a story from you all from the book of Genesis. And this story has to do with Abram. Before he became Abraham, he was married at this point, and he had been traveling around with his relative Lot. And both of them had all the things that they needed. They both had herds, they had flocks, they had people that helped them manage all of their stuff. And there came a point where they realized that together they had too much stuff. They had too many people together that they had to separate. They had to split up. They couldn't stay in the same place anymore. And so they had to decide where they were going to go. And in the Holy Land, in the land where they were wandering around, there's the Jordan River that runs down the middle of it. And all along the Jordan River is this beautiful, lush land that has water. It's good for growing plants. It's good for animals. And so they had to figure out which one of them was going to get that beautiful, lush Jordan Valley and which one was going to have to go and dwell in the land of Canaan. And so I want to read this story to you all and pay attention to how Abram goes about settling this decision. This is the book of Genesis, chapter 13. So Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the Negeb. Now Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and gold. And he journeyed on from the Negeb as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place where he had made an altar at the first. And there Abram called upon the name of the Lord. And Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, so that the land could not support both of them dwelling together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. At that time, the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land. Then Abram said to Lot, "Let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are family. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if you take the right hand, then I will go to the left." And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus they separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the valley and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, "Lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward, and eastward and westward. For all the land that you see, I will give to you, and to your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring can also be counted. Arise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you." So Abram moved his tent and came and settled by the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. So in this story, Abram and Lot have to separate. They have too many people and too many things for them to be able to stay in the same place at the same time. And like I said, there's this beautiful valley along the Jordan River that's fertile, it has water, it's a really nice, beautiful place to live. And so they have to decide who is going to get to live in that beautiful area and who's going to have to go somewhere else. And Abram knows this. And so he goes into this conversation, and what did he do? How did he avoid conflict with Lot, with his relative? Well, he could have come out and he could have said, well, the Lord has spoken to me and he's called me to do great things, and so I think it's really important that I get first dibs on where I'm going to settle my tent and where I'm going to live. But he didn't do that. Even though Abram knew that he was on this special journey from the Lord, he came to his relative Lot and he said, well, what land do you want? And he offered it to him, and he said, you can take whatever land that you want. If you want to go to the right, then I'll go to the left. Or if you want to go to the left, then I'll go to the right. Another way of looking at it is Abram was willing to put Lot's needs ahead of his own. And when he did that, he was able to avoid any conflict. He was able to avoid any strife with his relative. And Lot was able to choose the land that he wanted, and Abram said, okay. And so he went and dwelt somewhere else. And on the one hand, it looks like Lot made out with this one, right? He got this beautiful land along the Jordan River. But if you notice what it said that he went and he settled in a city of Sodom. And it said that the people who were there were wicked and evil people. So even though Lot was able to choose what he wanted, and he took what he thought was the best land for himself, he actually ended up in a city full of really evil, really mean people. And a few chapters later, we learn that that city is so evil that it actually gets burned to the ground. So it doesn't end up very well for Lot. But Abram, who was willing to put Lot's needs ahead of his own and offer to Lot whatever land he wanted, he goes over and he dwells in the land of Canaan. And while he's there, the Lord speaks to him and he says, Abram, look at this entire land. Travel the whole thing. Go to the north and the south and the east and the west. Because this whole land I am going to give to you and to your descendants. And so Abram, even though he gave Lot the first choice of the land that he wanted, and he let Lot take what was sort of the nicest land that was there, in the end, Abram is the one who is able to inherit the entire land, because he wasn't going about it from a selfish place. And I think another way of looking at it is that Abram here was a peacemaker. He was looking towards peace. It said that the herdsmen of Abram's flocks and the herdsmen of Lot's flocks had already been fighting with each other. So he saw that there might be fights over this kind of stuff. And so he was able to cut through that and diffuse the conflict by putting someone else's needs ahead of his own. And so this is a good example of what it is to be a peacemaker. Because when we focus on getting what we want, when we focus on the things that we want in our lives, that's how we end up with fights and arguments and arguing over things. But when we focus on what other people need and how we can take care of other people's needs, that's what leads to us being able to live together well and be happy together. And so the beatitude that this is based on is the beatitude that blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the sons of God, or the children of God. And so I want to turn now and think about, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a child of God, to be called that name? And for that, I want to turn now to the teachings of the new church and share a passage from the work, The Doctrine of Life, that talks about the meaning of being called children of God. This is from The Doctrine of Life, number 51. It says, people are called children of God and born of God when they are not governed by the inherent nature of their will, and so neither by the inherent nature of their intellect. That is, they are people who are not prompted by evil and its accompanying falsity, and they are people who believe in the Lord. What I want to draw out of this passage is it talks about people who are the children of God are people who are not governed by their inherent nature of their will or the inherent nature of their understanding. Every single one of us was born as a baby. And the way that our mind works and the way that our heart works when we're first born is that we think about ourselves. And it makes sense, right? Babies need to be able to do this. A baby doesn't wake up in the middle of the night and think, well, has my mom gotten enough sleep tonight? The baby wakes up and thinks, I'm hungry. And it has no way of communicating that. So it just cries until it gets the food that it needs. We have to be like this in order to survive. That's why we're created that way. But then as we grow and as we get older and as our brain starts to grow and we start to be able to understand things, we start to understand that, oh, life isn't just about me getting what I want. We have to learn to care about other people. And that's what this passage is saying, that people who are the children of God are the people who don't just stay in that native state, in that state of thinking about ourselves and what we want and getting as much as we can. But it's people who are able to turn that around and instead focus on caring about other people and loving other people. Because when we put others' needs in front of our own, that is how we create a loving community. And in thinking about this subject, I was reminded of a saying that a friend of mine told me a couple weeks ago that I thought was interesting. They said there's two kinds of people in this world. There's the kind of person who goes to a party where there's pizza being served, and they take 2 slices because they're afraid that there won't be enough. And then the other kind of person is someone who goes to the same party with the same pizza and takes 1 slice because they're afraid that there's not going to be enough. And I thought this was interesting because they have the same thought process. They're looking at this and saying, well, there might not be enough pizza for everyone to have as much as they want. So what are we going to do? Well, the first person says, well, there may not be enough, so I better make sure that I get as much as I want right now. And then that way, maybe someone else won't get any pizza, but they know that they have exactly what they want. But the other person thinks, well, there might not be enough pizza for everyone, and so I want to make sure that everyone else can have as much as they need. So even though I would love to have 2 slices, I'm only going to take this 1 to make sure that there's enough for all of us. And you can imagine if there was like a kid's a birthday party and there wasn't enough pizza for everyone, we can imagine the fights that might break out and the arguments over who gets what pizza. That's not a very peaceful party, is it? But if there's a place where everyone makes sure that everyone else has what they need, when we make sure that there's enough pizza for everyone, then that's where there's not going to be any fights. That's how we become peacemakers. And so this is our big takeaway from this morning, that we can focus on being peacemakers, just like Abram, by noticing the times where our brain starts to think about getting what we want in a situation. If we notice any of those thoughts this week of us thinking, well, I better make sure that I get what I need here because I don't know if I'm going to be able to. When we notice those thoughts, instead, we can turn around and ask ourselves, what is someone else's needs here? How can I shift my thinking instead of just being worried about me getting what I want and instead think about how can I help make sure that someone else has everything that they need? And the beautiful thing about this is that we might be worried if we do that, then we won't have what we want, that there won't be enough for us in the end. But notice what happened with Abram. When he let go of the need to get what he wanted and instead gave the choice to Lot, Lot chose that beautiful piece of land. But when Abram went and settled in the land of Canaan, the Lord told him, I'm going to give you this entire land. He ended up with way more than Lot ever did. And this is the beauty, that when we are willing to focus on loving other people and put other people's needs ahead of our own, the Lord actually will be able to provide us with everything that we need as well. So we don't need to worry about it. So that's what we can focus on this week, is being peacemakers so that we can be children of God. Amen. Please rise for a blessing. My mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. So before we move into the Holy Supper portion of our service, I wanted to take a little more time to talk more about this theme of being a peacemaker. And in specific, I really wanted to look at the meaning of the word peace. Because peace is a really common word that we all use all the time, but what does it really mean on a spiritual level to think about peace? And especially if we are to seek peace or be peacemakers in this world, what does that really look like for us in a practical way? You know, when I was in high school, I went to a school where your senior year, your class gets together and you choose a quote from the Bible or from the writings, and it becomes sort of your class's quote, and they put it on a banner, and that banner with that quote on it is sort of the icon of your class forever. And when I was in high school, I remember when my class voted on the passage that we wanted to be our quote, and what we landed on was the quote that I used to open the service after I opened the Word. It was, "Seek peace and pursue it." And at that point, when I was in high school, I really didn't like that quote. I didn't vote for it. I wasn't a big fan of it because my understanding of peace was kind of a hokey thing, right? Peace was flashing peace signs and hugging everyone and telling everyone you love them, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I was sort of like, that's what we want to define our entire class? But then that summer, I read an article that was talking about what peace really means, and it shared some passages from the teachings of the new church about the meaning of peace. And I began to realize that peace is actually a really powerful concept. And after reading that article, I began to actually really like that quote. And now it's actually one of my favorite quotes in the entire Word. "Turn from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it." And so what I want us to think about this morning is what it means to seek peace, not in this natural way that I thought of when I was in high school, but what does it really mean to spiritually seek peace in our lives? And so with that, I want to turn and share another passage from the teachings of the new church that talks about the real meaning of peace. This is from the work Heaven and Hell, number 290. "I have talked with angels about peace as well, and have told them that on earth they call it peace when wars and conflicts between nations are over, or enmities and disagreements between individuals, and that they think inner peace is simply the peace of mind we have when anxieties are banished, or especially the relief and delight when things turn out well for us. The angels have responded, though, that this peace of mind, this relief and delight when anxieties are banished and things turn out well for us, may look like effects of peace, but they do not come from real peace except in people who are focused on heavenly good. This is because peace occurs only in that good. Peace actually flows in from the Lord into the very core of such individuals, and from that core comes down and spreads into their lower natures, causing peace of mind, relief of the spirit, and a consequent joy. For people engrossed in evil, though, there is no peace. There is an apparent calm, tranquility, and pleasure when they get their way, but this is outward only, with no inward substance. Inside there is raging hostility, hatred, vengefulness, cruelty, and all kinds of evil cravings. Their spirits rush into these feelings the moment they see anyone who is not on their side, and it bursts forth whenever there is no fear to restrain it. This is why their delight is at home in insanity, while the delight of people involved in good is at home in wisdom. It is like the difference between hell and heaven." So what I like about this passage is it kind of talks about what I was facing when I was in high school, this idea of peace that's out there, that, well, peace is just when there's no war, or when you're able to just feel totally relaxed, like sitting by a beach. That's true peace. But the passage is saying that, okay, those things can feel like peace and they can look like peace, but real spiritual peace actually comes from doing what's good. It comes from following the Lord. And it makes sense, right? Because if our heart is filled with hatred for other people or selfishness for ourselves, then how much peace can we really feel in our lives? If we are like that first person in the example I gave earlier who takes 2 pieces of pizza to make sure that they have what they want, if that's the way that our mind works, that we look out at the world and we're so concerned about making sure that we get what we want before someone else takes it, that's not a very peaceful frame of mind, is it? We look out at the world and we see enemies. We see people who are against us, who are fighting for the same things that we're trying to get to. But instead, when we focus on doing what's right, when we focus on loving the Lord, when we focus on living the way that He calls us to live, then that can lead us to true peace. Because when we're treating other people well, when we're loving other people, when we're putting other people's needs in front of our own, then we have nothing to be afraid of, right? We have no skeletons in our closet that we have to be afraid someone's going to find out about. We can just be who we are. Imagine what it's like when we tell a lie. That in the moment it feels like, oh, this is going to make life easier if I just tell a lie here rather than facing the truth. But then from then on, we have to keep up with that lie. We have to remember to keep our story straight and not accidentally let people find out about it. And then we're afraid of the truth. That's not a peaceful way to live. So seeking peace and pursuing it isn't about flashing people the peace sign and giving everyone hugs and saying we love them. Seeking peace is about holding ourselves accountable to live a good heavenly life. It's about going back to the Lord in His Word and allowing Him to guide us, to show us the pathway forward, because we trust that He is going to lead us toward happiness, towards rest. That is what I want us to think about this morning. And so as we get ready to come forward and partake in the sacrament of the Holy Supper, I would invite us to reflect on this concept of peace. And remember that when we eat this bread and we drink this wine, it's a reminder that we are here working with the Lord. It's a reminder that we need the Lord in our lives to show us the pathway forward, to lead us in the way of peace. And it's a reminder of our job, that we need to remember to go back to Him, to learn His words, to learn His ideas, and to hold ourselves accountable to trying to live according to them, to love other people over just ourselves. And so that's what I would invite us to think about as we come forward and partake of the Holy Supper this morning. Ways that we can be peacemakers, how we can seek peace and pursue it so that we can all be children of God. We will now move into the Holy Supper portion of our service.